What if learning a new language could actually feel less like a chore and more like, well, an adventure? That's exactly what we're diving into today. How these immersive social games are completely changing language education, turning that grind of memorization into the thrill of the game. We've all been there, right? That feeling of just staring at a mountain of flashcards, trying to force all those words into your brain. It's like a rite of passage for anyone trying to learn a language. But let's be honest, it can be super frustrating. And you know what? The research is pretty clear. It's not always the best way to actually become fluent. So let's really break this down. Think about it. On one hand, you've got the old school way. It's pretty passive, right? You're often alone, just you and a textbook. And that can make you kind of scared to even try speaking. But then you have this whole other approach, immersive social learning. And it's the total opposite. It's active, it's about working together, and it builds your confidence because you're actually using the language in a real interactive setting. All right, so here's what's on deck. First, we're going to talk about the classroom wall, the limits of the old ways. Then we'll jump into learning through play, see how it really builds up your confidence, check out some cool games in action, and wrap up by looking at what's next. Okay, let's kick things off with section 1, the classroom wall. We're going to dig into why the way we've always done things might not be the best way anymore. So here's the real problem, right? The old methods often create this weird disconnect. You memorize a ton of words, but when it comes time to have an actual conversation, you freeze. You know the word, but you don't know how to use it. And that gap, it just kills your fluency, makes you afraid to speak, and completely misses the whole cultural side of things, which is just so, so important. So how do we actually break through that wall? Well, that's what section 2 is all about. Learning through play. This is where we see how these immersive social games are carving out a totally new path to getting fluent. Okay, so what are we really talking about here? Basically, immersive social games use teamwork and interactive play to create these really dynamic worlds. The whole point is that the language isn't just some boring subject you study. No, it becomes a tool you need to use to, win the game or complete the mission. And honestly, this is the secret sauce. This whole thing works so well because it taps into something that's just part of being human. We love to play. We love to compete, to work together. And the second learning feels like a game, it stops feeling like a chore. Our brains just open up and become way more ready to soak it all in. All right, but this isn't just about learning vocabulary lists. This playful approach builds something so much bigger. That brings us to section 3, Beyond Words, where we'll see how it creates the kind of confidence every single language learner needs. Okay, so check this out. You get this amazing 2-for-1 deal. On the one side, yeah, you're building up all those language skills. You're learning words in context. Your fluency gets better. Grammar starts to just feel natural. But, and this is huge, at the same time, you're building up your social skills. Things like teamwork, understanding culture, and most importantly, getting the confidence to actually speak without that awful anxiety. This quote just nails it. Think about it from a psychological angle. When your brain switches into play mode, all your defenses come down. That anxiety just melts away. And suddenly you're willing to take a chance, to try out a new phrase, to just jump into the conversation. And that willingness to take a risk is exactly where the real learning happens. Okay, so this all sounds amazing in theory, right? But what does it actually look like in the real world? Let's find out in section 4, Games and Action. We've got some really cool examples to show you. First up, we have live action role-playing, or LARP for short. If you haven't heard of it, it's basically where you become a character physically and act out different scenarios in a made-up world with other people. I mean, you can't get much more immersive than that. Just imagine it for a second. You're not just studying English. You are living in an English-speaking world. You have to talk, you have to negotiate deals, you have to solve problems, all as your character. There was this awesome case study from a high school in Germany. They ran a medieval-themed LARP, and the students' fluency and confidence just shot through the roof. Why? Because they finally had a reason to use the language that they actually cared about. All right, example number 2, improv theater games. This is all about thinking on your feet, being spontaneous, and just reacting to what's happening. Kind of like a real conversation. What's so brilliant about improv is that there's no script. You have no choice but to listen really closely and come up with something creative on the spot. It's the ultimate training for thinking on your feet in another language. And get this, A study at a university in Japan showed that improv games seriously lowered students' anxiety about speaking. Their oral skills got way better because making a mistake wasn't a big deal. It was just part of the game. And for our third example, something a little different, social card games. These are a bit more structured, sure, but they're still a super fun and interactive way to practice very specific language skills. You can design these card games to focus on almost anything, specific vocabulary, tricky grammar rules, you name it. And that repetition you need for memorization, it just happens naturally while you play. You don't even notice it. There was a language school in Brazil that did this, and their students' vocabulary retention went way, way up. It's simple, really. They learned more because they were having a good time. Now, these examples are incredible, but believe it or not, they're really just the start. So for our last section, let's look to the horizon. Let's talk about the future of learning and where all of this is headed. So what's next? Well, first off, even deeper immersion, thanks to things like virtual and augmented reality. I mean, can you imagine practicing how to order a coffee by actually being in a virtual Parisian cafe? Then there's personalization, where AI will literally tailor the game to how you learn best. And finally, global connection. We're talking online platforms where you can play and practice in real time with other learners from all over the planet. When you boil it all down, this is about so much more than just learning words. The real goal here is to prepare people to communicate, not just effectively, but with empathy in this crazy, connected world of ours. It's not just about making someone a language learner. It's about helping them become a true global citizen. And that really just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. When we turn language learning from this boring chore into something genuinely fun and engaging, we unlock so much potential. So it really makes you think, if we can make learning a language this exciting, what else could we completely reimagine?